So today, honored to be joined by this group of experts with diverse perspectives and extensive experience, including two of our heads of contracting activities and one of our chiefs of the contracting office. Before our panel, we had a question from the audience about sort of the difference between, the Chief Procurement Officer, the heads of contracting, the contracting officers, COCOs. So let me, before we jump in, just sort of demystify that, if you will. So the Chief Procurement Officer is a statutory position who also serves as the Senior Procurement Executive. That is my boss, Mr. Paul Courtney. By law, the CPO is responsible for the acquisition workforce and also may delegate key procurement functions to various heads of the contracting activities. So we have 9 of those heads of contracting activities at DHS. They manage all the operational contracting activities within their respective components and responsible for overseeing and directing those contracting operations and compliance with all of the myriad applicable laws, regulations, and policies that we have. Under that, we have the chiefs of the contracting office who are designated by the HCAs, and they typically oversee a functional area or a team, an office, if you will, and provide leadership and management to that team. And then finally, of course, we have the contracting officers, which is who you want that signs on the dotted line of those contracts. It enters into, administers, and terminates contracts for the federal government. They have authority to legally bind the government to those contractual agreements, but only within the bounds of their warrant, which is their sort of authority given to them by their head of contracting, and of course, subject to applicable reviews. So the core responsibilities of these roles remain under the FAR overhaul. Those don't change, but we do see that shift from rigid compliance model to a more focused on good business decisions and speed. So with that in mind, I'm pleased to introduce those with us today. As Megan said, Shreena Morris, HCA for U.S. Coast Guard. Shreena returns to DHS from her previous role as the Senior Procurement Executive of OPM. Denise Morales, the HCA for TSA, previously the Deputy HCA for FEMA. Thank you, Denise, for joining us. Denise has only been in her role for a little over a month, so we're very excited to hear those sort of fresh perspectives. And then, of course, Julie Koo, who's the Chief of the Contracting Office for CBP's Border Enforcement and Administration portfolio. So thank you all for being here today and sharing some expertise with us. But let me jump into the questions that we had to kick off the conversation. So wanted to just take a look at the current landscape of outcome-based contracting at DHS. And I want you guys to talk to us about why is this approach important and what are you looking for from industry and what sort of incentives and disincentives that you think drive the most effective desired outcomes. Shreena, let's start with you.
Sure. Well, good. Is it afternoon yet? Good afternoon, everyone. Happy to be here, and I can say for Coast Guard, especially in this season, outcome-based contracting is critically important for us and enables us to focus on mission readiness and operational effectiveness, which is key, especially when it comes to OB3 and what we're trying to accomplish under this administration. I would say, especially considering our mission sets, which could span from environmental protection, maritime security, and search and rescue, those are very diverse mission sets, and we have to deliver. People are gonna recognize if you didn't clean up the oil spill timely and undue damage occurred to the area that it impacted. So it's really critical that any of our industry partners who are working with us, they understand that diversity and the challenge that comes to trying to respond such a diverse mission set all across Coast Guard. So what I'm looking for and what my contracting teams are looking for when they're engaging with industry is one, an understanding of the challenge. Sometimes we're gonna come and we need to move really fast. Sometimes schedule is king. Sometimes seeing something very different and thinking outside the box is key. It's our goal to try to make sure we convey that to you so you know how to adequately engage with us, but then being willing to really find the flexibility, find the innovation when it exists to be able to hit the ground running to deliver that mission is really key. And when it comes to incentives, because of our diverse mission set, it's really going to vary, but I would say the preponderance of what we do at Coast Guard is commercial based, right? And so if it's commercial, you got firm fixed price, you've got to really think about the strategy, how you would get out in front of that. Sometimes it's changing contract type and being flexible on that, but a lot of times it starts with how did we define it and how did we engage with you guys? So we're all here under the DHS umbrella, so at Coast Guard we really try to lean forward and think about the Procurement Innovation Lab in terms of like, how do we structure the solicitation? How do we start? It's hard to fix a problem down the line, right? So we really try to collaborate early on and think about that creativity in the contract structure, even the approach to solicit for a contract. That's really been key for us in terms of thinking innovative. When it comes to disincentives, we don't love those, but sometimes we'll have to maybe withhold payment, partial invoice, or maybe restructure contracts as we get into it and we find out something's not working. We're not afraid to revisit metrics that don't serve us. So we've had a lot of success in kind of, they're not completely outside the box thinking. A lot of it is, as we were hearing, more common sense. Let's not be afraid to change course if it's not serving us.
Yeah, thank you. Denise?
No, thank you again for inviting me and being here. Yes, a month into TSA and learning a lot about the future of travel and learning a lot about what we're doing at TSA. But similar to Shreena, we're always looking for what is the solution. It's like adding to what Shreena had mentioned, moving from problem solving in a way to a problem avoidance when it comes to how do I get something solved in the new mission set and vision for the agency and the department. So similarly, what we're looking is to hear more from you. I'm like very open to and understand from industry what they're seeing out there that could benefit how we move forward, how we progress. Speed is definitely one of the things we're looking into. How do we can make this faster? Because technology is constantly moving, constantly shifting, and how do we keep pace up with that? So ongoing conversations is what is key for us because it helps us understand proactively what is not working so we can shift the metrics, shift the conversations, and make sure we have the right solutions in place. A contract, can be changed and modified to adjust to that evolving need. So there's an engagement that it has to be ongoing. It can't be just fixed in a point in time, but looking proactively as to what is also changing outside of, the federal space. What are the new things and the modernization so that we can be up to date in what we're approaching and what our solution is going to look like.
Yeah, great. Julia, CBP perspective.
Good morning, and I'm happy to be here representing Earl Lewis, our HCA, and CBP. Yeah, similar to what Denise said and Shreena said, we are looking on saving not only on sometimes, we have a lot of money, right? Everybody knows about the one big beautiful bill, but at the same time, we still need to look for savings as far as dollars are concerned, time, and also improved performance. So that is why this is very important to us. But bottom line is that we need to deliver at the speed of mission. And as many of you know, the speed of mission is very, very quick around here. And it's faster than I've ever seen it before. So we need to be able to do that. And those outcome-based contracting needs to direct that mission and also deliver the high performance that we need for the men and women in the front line. I think what we need from industry is kind of ways to relook at the outcomes and help us define what success looks like, because a lot of the SLAs that we were using in the past are no longer valid, right? Like many of you have seen many contracts with SLAs that are kind of easy to achieve. So we need to really look at like what does success look like, and we need help to define what success looks like also from industries, internal but external as well. And one last thing, kind of going off of what I just said, is outcome needs to be measurable and very clear, because some of the times when we did have measurements for incentive type contracts, for example, they tend to be very convoluted, and you need to do calculus to get to what the outcome is, right? So we need to make sure that we, in the spirit of streamlining and efficiency, that those outcomes and those measurements are clear and precise.
Yeah, I love that. So we all want to work with a boss that gives us measurable and clear goals, and I think that like sort of translates directly into also the agreement between government and industry, and focusing on those measurable, smart goals that kind of gets us there. Heard some themes there, you know, kind of beginning with the end in mind, and we're in this environment where it seems to have its own centrifugal force and things are moving faster than ever, and we need that perspective from industry to help make sure that we can get there. So turning to some of the hurdles, DHS had a huge push this year to look at some of our contracts with our partners and see about moving some of those to outcome-based contracts as opposed to your more statement of work prescriptive, how we want industry to do the work. And we saw a tremendous, I think, step forward with some of our projects doing that and working with our partners there. But talk to us about some of the major challenges that you've encountered sort of implementing those outcome-based contracts. Denise, let's start with you.
So looking at challenges, I think generally speaking, and what I've observed is really understanding what the solution looks like. I hate to sound like a broken record in a way, but the conversations and clarity and understanding what is that end goal, and not only like what are the little steps that even need to go through, like both from a program perspective, like government perspective, what are the hurdles that need to either be lowered or reduced earlier on so that we can achieve that bottom line mission set. I think that, again, going back to conversations, contract management, the relationship building is one of the things that is key to ensure that this is achieved with outcome-based contracts.
Shreena?
I think it all starts, so if you are focusing on outcome-based, then you have an end goal in mind, right? And if we're trying to incentivize, trying to develop metrics that are both meaningful to Coast Guard and then for you guys as our industry partners has been our biggest challenge. We know the thing we have to deliver, and you often know the deadline, you're usually behind. So usually trying to reverse engineer that, and how do we get there ahead of this deadline that maybe we didn't know about, 6 months ago, would have been nice. You can't go back and put the genie in the bottle. So it's required us to really use a laser focus. Maybe it's having more collaborative workshops. I've been in the contracting world for a while, and I don't have to tell you guys that sometimes the government isn't its own best ally in terms of bogarting our own problems, and then we want a solution to you guys, and we want to deliver, and we're like, hey, I need you to propose. And you're like, this is not feasible. I can't meet this. This is the wrong type. Just doesn't work. So really trying to carve out time where it doesn't exist to be able to have more of that collaborative engagement where we can clearly say, this is what we need. How could you guys be incentivized? What's the reality? What's actually deliverable? What time frame does that look like? And really kind of figuring out where that wiggle room is really been a challenge for us, especially with the very diverse mission set that I have here at Coast Guard. It's going to look different for search and rescue. It's going to look different for some of our IT. And it's not a one-size-fits-all. So you really have to get in for each acquisition and figure out the environment, figure out the stakeholders, and try to think creatively for every single scenario. And that's not an easy feat, because sometimes you would love to copy-paste. We just don't get to do that in our world.
Yeah. Julie?
Yeah, and I'm going to get a little bit more tactical in the contracting world since I'm the chief of contracting. It is, for us, has been a little bit of the contract type. It's hard to go to outcome-based contracting if we're doing T&M and labor hour contracts. So for us, we're trying to shift into more firm fixed price type contracts, and we are working on that now to be able to, change the contract type. It doesn't happen overnight. As much as people like us to do things firm fixed price overnight, they're not going to happen that way, right? We're going to have to start with the things that we have clear deliverables, and then we're going to also have to start with the ones that are in sustainment mode, at least for the IT folks, right? So once we move that to a more firm fixed price environment, then we can also evolve into the outcome base. But if we have a lot of T&M and we don't do cost type anymore as much as we used to, but if we're still in that space, it's really hard to get the outcome based. So incremental changes is what we need in all aspects of what we do.
Yeah, no, that's excellent. I think the contract type issue, I think you'll see a lot of this year because the Revolutionary FAR overhaul has given us a few more tools to sort of exploit, looking at with our partners, can we negotiate a different contract type? Can we do a contract conversion from a time and materials to a firm fixed price? And there are times when that doesn't make sense, and there are times when that has worked out amazing for us, and we've done some of that this year. So I would encourage industry to be forthcoming if you see those opportunities to contact your program, to contact your contracting officer and say, hey, we could do something here. We could change this to get a better outcome for the government, or to get, find those innovative flexibilities and try to exploit that for better outcomes. But that's definitely something I think you'll see more of this year. So as we all know, a major focus in federal procurement right now is improving the efficiency and effectiveness of the process itself. Right, and so let me start with Julie again. At CBP, how do you balance the need for those rapid solution deliveries with the pursuit of innovative outcomes?
Yeah, so we're actually doing this quite a bit now. We're realizing that contracts are not a one and done thing, right? I think, Shreena, you mentioned this. We're not going to negotiate a contract with you all and then say, okay, now we're done, let's close the book and move on. We really need to look at what are we getting delivered? Are the outcomes that we're receiving still pertinent? Are the incentives and disincentives still working? And we need to re-look at how we're doing things. And we need to, if we're not getting the outcomes that we need to come back to the table with you all and have that conversation and be like, hey, this is not the direction in which we're trying to go. And I think there's a lot of things that are going on, especially with the FAR overhaul about modular contracting, especially in IT. And I think in the operational realm, we are very, very accustomed to the modular delivery of goods and services, but I don't think we're as comfortable in the contracting sense, right? So we need to be able to marry up the delivery of products and services, right, with the type of contracting that requires constant rebaselining and looking at what we're getting delivered through these contract vehicles.
Great. Denise?
So I think most of you, if not all, were here earlier and heard my counterpart, Mr. Balaji, talking about what he saw for TSA. And one of the things that he had mentioned is all of this modernization, great, but it's got to be a sustainable innovation. It's got to be repeatable. So to us in contracting is, how do I make that happen? That is what I'm always going to look and have my team look. And again, I said it earlier as well, as repeated record here, and the communications, that's has to be ongoing, looking at what works, what's not working, what can be changed, have check-ins, things like that, to make sure that we have that partnership to make things happen. And obviously what we want out of this partnership is a continued partnership. That's, again, going back to an incentive. Here's the solution that we're providing. Industry has helped, TSA in our case, develop this new vision, this new era. How do we make it long-term? So an ongoing conversation, the ongoing discussions of what's working, what's not working, is going to be critical for the success of outcomes, and solutions-based.
Yeah, balancing speed and innovation. Shreena?
Yeah, kind of echoing what others have said. So rapid solution delivery, it's obviously key. But one of the things I talk to my team is everything doesn't need to be innovative. Sometimes what worked. Maybe it's looking at what do we need to get to, and what minor tweaks do we make in that process that will either improve the speed in which we deliver something or even the success of what we deliver. So it's almost kind of thinking about it just a little bit differently, not throwing the baby out with the bathwater, but just all right, let's make some minor tweaks to how we did this last time. Because ultimately at Coast Guard, what we always get back to is we need to not create any degradation to mission. So if delivering this service or this widget is still critical, I don't need to impact that. I need to maybe deliver something faster. I maybe need to improve what I've delivered. So that's where our challenge has been at Coast Guard, trying to figure out what does reimagining look like with some of the things that quite frankly weren't broken. Maybe we could just make a couple of tweaks and we would be in a better place. And that all gets back to setting realistic outcomes, as with you guys as our industry partners, and it's internally, us setting better expectations about when we start to define, when we're about to go out on the follow-on procurement, letting people know it's not status quo, but we want your feedback. We want to know what meaningful tweaks we could make in advance so that you guys have time to think about those strategies and tweaks that you would make to our strategy and kind of create that win-win for more successful mission delivery.
Looking ahead, how do you see outcome-based contract evolving in the coming years? We talked about some things that happened this year that were significantly different, perhaps from some of the things that we had done in the past, like really going to the table, looking at the entire portfolio of our contracts with a company and seeing kind of where we could find those efficiencies, where we could look at contract conversions, where we could look at better outcome-based kind of things. But in the coming years, we are going to have such an opportunity through exploiting some of the RFO flexibilities and some of the flexibilities that frankly we have always had, that we haven't been as good at really pushing the envelope on and seeing what the art of the possible is with all of those things. But what kind of skills and capabilities will our procurement professionals need to effectively navigate and lead in that challenging area? Julie, let's start with you.
Yeah, so outcome-based contracting has been around a long time, as you all know, right? So it's not new to any of us. I think what kind of happened was we made it overly complicated. It was taking a lot of resources for us to be able to implement proper outcome-based contracting. And sometimes, actually, if it wasn't very difficult, we weren't getting anything more than the baseline, right? We weren't getting something greater than what people were supposed to do in the first place, right? So now that we are kind of, we have some of these tools, like we have AI, we have like the FAR overhaul, I think people are going to be able to spend their time to fine-tune this finer skill that I love, which is called government contracting. As much as people don't love it, it's a fantastic field, and we're going to be able to sharpen our pencils, right, our tools, to be able to do the art that is government contracting, which is very, very exciting. Another thing that I think is going to happen is, I think this is going to happen, don't quote me, maybe it won't, but I think as we're moving to more modular contracting, we're going to start like piecing out these major contracts that are behemoths, right? Just large contracts where we can't define what the outcomes and the deliverables are going to be into manageable pieces of work that really deliver the solutions that we need, right? So this is going to give opportunities to smaller, mid-sized firms because we're not going to just have these large contracts that are not well defined.
Yeah, much more agile, iterative, kind of focusing on the end.
Yes.
At the beginning, right?
And that's what we're going to have time to do that with some of these other efficiencies that we're going to gain through AI and the reform.
Perfect. Denise?
No, and then for sure, and if I were to then add what our, procurement personnel would need, it's education in a way. So I say education because they're at the table with our programs. They don't need to be the technical SMEs, but they need to know enough about the industry, enough about the problem, enough to know that AI, while a great tool, may not solve all of it. There's got to be some critical thinking to it. There's got to be some conversations as to what the end goal needs to be and what hurdles need to be lowered and removed. Again, ongoing education, communication, learning from you, what is not working from an RFP perspective that they need to adjust. What of the requirements? So there's a lot that we do expect from our contracting field. It's not just contract knowledge, but they do have to learn a lot more to be able to be that partner that makes it happen, because I see it as contracting is the enablers of the mission. There's not a mission set that does not get impacted through contracts. So they all in their respective categories need to know enough about that mission and marry up the federal acquisition regulations or any additional policies to make things happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Shreena?
Yeah. So just to build on what the others have said, I think the key going forward is going to be critical thinking and a little bit of that data analytics. So as Denise said, we're not experts as the contracting people. I can't tell you how many rooms that I go in and I'm like, what are we buying? All right, say it slower. All right, now say it differently. I'm struggling to just better understand sometimes of what my customer is trying to get. So it's not my job to be an expert. It's my job to think critically and connect the pieces of the puzzle together so that I can help solution with my contracting team. But at the end of the day, it's got to have some sort of data-driven. And we're talking about outcome-based. How do you get to an outcome if you didn't analyze the data? You didn't know, and if your data was bad, I don't know. So I think for our contracting people, we don't expect them to be experts. We do expect them to think critically. So it's kind of hard to teach creative thinking, right? It's stretching how we think. It's not just taking certain things for granted. It's looking at it differently and getting different diverse viewpoints and then sticking the landing and making a decision, right? I think if we really dig in on the critical thinking aspect and really start to better harness data analytics, I think we'll be in a much stronger position.
Yeah, no, I love that. I mean, who wouldn't love to buy like really big boats? Or is it ships? I get
They are
them
cutters.
confused.
None of the above.
I'm only 7 months into the job. They're still training me up, but yeah, Coast Guard's mission's pretty impressive.
So procurement is amazing because I've gotten to buy things, and then you learn about things when you're procuring them or when you have a major acquisition program where you have these things like, our careers in procurement can span these like different topics. You might have guns and ammo, and you might have really complex professional services, you might have cutters, you might have like all of these things. So it is really amazing to get that span through your career. But we touched on some elements there I think are worth sort of reiterating, and that's like the education piece and the critical thinking piece. And I think Denise said it, we have asked so much of our contracting teams. When I started in contracting, my checklist was like a page long. And it was cool, like I had that down. I was a business advisor and like I knew what the checklist said. The most recent checklist that we did for our contracting officers, I think span 7 pages, maybe even like if you added in all of the other additional things and some helpful hints and tips, it's like 16 pages. So we've sort of exponentially increased what we ask contracting officers to do, and all of, we might look at it as boxes to check, but that are actually very deeply important things that require critical thought and coordination with your program, with others, all sorts of things. And I think that's a very important point, especially as we look at the Revolutionary Fire overhaul and implementation of that. We're hoping that checklist can be kind of pared down a little bit, and you need a very big acquisition team, especially when you're doing some of these really major procurements and very complex things. But we have about 15, these are my 2024 numbers, we have about 1,500 contracting officers, contract specialists across the department. Then we have about 15,000 members of the acquisition workforce. So your program managers, your contracting officers, representatives, including your contracting officers, all of those, and that whole team, that whole procurement and acquisition team. And so we are in the middle of this process of trying to modernize our processes, trying to get all of those 15,000 people to understand exactly what you could do, like what is the art of the possible, to move this forward faster, better, more innovative, more effective. and deliver on those goals that we have. And so I think we also ask industry to be mindful that this is going to be a year of huge change management for us as well across the entire federal government. We're doing a lot of training with our folks. We are very internally focused in some ways right now, trying to make sure that our own folks and frankly even ourselves understand what's happening with the Revolutionary Fire overhaul and what are the changes. Like being able to do a BPA off of an IDIQ is like mind blown. But I want to exploit that. I want to like really dig into that because there's opportunities there for industry, for us, for our programs, for the taxpayer, right? So there's just so much going on right now in that space. But you know, I think that's a really important point and something we kind of touched on, but just wanted to bring that home for everybody. So moving to that partnership that we have with industry that is so important, because when that partnership falls apart, you cannot expect good outcomes, right? So what would you guys offer to our industry leaders that are seeking to sort of leverage those recent reforms and deliver outcome-based solutions that meet our strategic needs? Like what kind of things can we talk about there? Shreena, let me start with you.
Sure. As Sarah said, it's a year of learning for all of us. I think I'm struggling to catch up myself. So what I would say is if you're seeing an opportunity to engage with a contracting officer in an agency and maybe they're advocating for a strategy or an approach, like don't be afraid to tell us, like, hey, had you considered this? I know it sounds weird, but we really do want to hear from you. And I know sometimes the reception you get, it might not feel as happy, but that's okay. Don't be afraid to tell us that you did your research too and you're curious and had we considered. And I wouldn't say just get us the copy paste of the link. Like, hey, I read your requirement. I was considering proposing. Here's one of these strategies that I would recommend. Here's why I think it's feasible. Like, we can train each other. We can learn from one another. So sometimes in all of the noise and trying to keep up, maybe they did overlook something. Maybe they didn't consider a possibility that you guys are our expert partners. Maybe you guys do know and you can share with us.
For sure, with Shreena, definitely is like listening from you. Sometimes I feel like some of you may know more about contracts that some of, you know, as we catch up on the RFO and new approach to doing contracts business. So hearing from you and what works, what's not working, like what other agencies are doing, and as a result, it's like, hey, this was a really creative way to do a technical evaluation on this type of proposal. Denise, you should really have your team consider this. I'd like to hear that feedback. What is working, what's not working, and what do you recommend best? Again, it's a shift in mindset. Changing behaviors and changing patterns do take time, so I appreciate the patience there, but the whole idea would be with more conversation, more of that engagement, the faster we can get there. So I would just second that on the continued conversations.
Julie?
Yeah, I think I'm kind of going to echo what everybody said. So what everybody said, and the word that I've been using kind of is rewiring. And I think it's going to be difficult, at least for me, and because I've been at this for a while now. And I think even industry, you guys' wired has been developed based on what we told you was permissible and not permissible. A lot of times you have come to us saying, hey, can we do this? And we're like, no, stop it. No, you cannot do that. You know, and now is time to say, maybe you can do that. Let's talk about it. Let's rewire the way that we're thinking about things. And that's going to take time. And we also ask for patience. They'll be like, well, we were at this panel thing and Julie said we need to rewire and, you know, and none of that, please. Because, you know, Earl might be like, what did you say? But all that to say, be patient. We're all learning at the same time. Change is really happening, but it's not going to happen overnight.
Yeah. No, absolutely. So this year is definitely going to mark a fundamental change and shift in how we operate, and especially as we aim to match the pace and the agility of the private sector. So I just encourage industry to let your voice be heard, let the government know if you see those opportunities. For our part, we recognize the need to engage with industry more and more effectively as we're developing our requirements. I always tell people you can have like the absolute perfect contract, but if your requirement was bad, your outcomes are going to be bad, right? So in response to that, we do have our industry liaison team has launched training and published resource guides on dhs.gov, so check those out. And we continue to enhance these efforts so that we can continue to better leverage industry's expertise to support the DHS mission. Before we wrap up, I did get another question also before we started. I wanted to quickly update you on a few of DHS's contracting authorities. The department's overall other transaction authority did expire a couple of years ago, although TSA has a very specific OT authority with TSA, and Coast Guard has their own permanent OT authority, but we do not have that overarching DHS authority at the moment. Also, congressional authority for the Small Business Innovation Research and Small Business Technology Transfer programs has lapsed. However, Phase 3 follow-on work that is properly traceable to prior awards can continue using non-SBIR funding and other available contracting authorities, right? There's always a way to get what we need. So just wanted you to be aware of that. But in the meantime, we are encouraging use of commercial solutions opening pilot. That is a very useful tool as we're finding, and so I think you'll see more of those sorts of engagements and solicitations coming out. And we're also exploring new and innovative ways of doing business in general, like public-private partnerships, or looking at outsourcing certain functions when it makes sense, and certainly deploying cutting-edge technologies to advance the mission. So I encourage you to stay tuned for all of that. Lots of developments this year. And with that, I do want to thank you all for coming. We appreciate you. And I can turn it back over to Megan.